The Supreme Court's Hobby Lobby decision ignited a firestorm of reactions across the political spectrum yesterday, with the most wild reactions coming from the left. Listen to this remarkably irresponsible claim by the frontrunner in the 2016 election.
It is a disturbing trend that you see in a lot of societies that are very unstable, anti-democratic, and frankly, prone to extremism. It's very troubling that a sales clerk at Hobby Lobby who needs contraception, which is pretty expensive, is not going to get that service through her employer's health care plan because her employer doesn't think she should be using contraception.
Well, it's no surprise that dangerous comments like those from Hillary Clinton would filter down to the rest of the liberal chattering class.
Apartheid in South Africa was justified on religious grounds. The Southern Baptist Convention justified slavery and later Jim Crow and segregation on religious grounds.
Somebody will say that's against my religious belief, or cases involving gays and lesbians, or cases involving people from different foreign origins.
Republicans want to do everything they can to have the long hand of government and now the long hand of business reach into a woman's body and make healthcare decisions for her.
Gross.
Reach inside a woman's body. Wow, that's pretty graphic. Dana, I have a theory. I think they're pretty excited about this. I think the left is secretly deep down, these radical feminists, they're jumping up and down at this ruling, even though they're delighted to mischaracterize it, because it gives them something not just to not talk about, like the IRS or the VA scandal. It gives them something. Yeah, it gives them something to now lie about.
Right, so heads they win, tails they win. They always win, win-win. I think even if they had prevailed in the court, they would have tried to run with that ball too. But losing in the court politically for them gives them a lot more reason to try to turn out the vote in November and then going into a possible Hillary Clinton candidacy. It's interesting that there's so many lawyers who have been elected leaders or public servants seem totally unable of digesting the law and dissecting it in a way that is rational and actually says what the court intended, which was not at all comparable to apartheid or Sharia law. But that's the kind of hyperbole and hysteria and emotional response that really works well in campaigns. It doesn't so much work, though, when you are talking about a Supreme Court decision. When Todd Akin, the Senate candidate in Missouri, said the stupid thing he said about rape, the Democrats are able to pin every Republican with that. A Supreme Court decision that is well-reasoned, like this one was, that it just doesn't work as well. I think the emotionalism will have to come out a little bit of the balloon before November, because the Supreme Court speaks, and that's just the way it's going to be.
You know, Eric, honor killings, female genital mutilation, that's what they're conflating this ruling with, which is a very narrowly tailored ruling. And I think they're going to Candy Crowley this thing as much as they can over the finish line. What's ironic to me is the law that the Supreme Court was considering was a Clinton-signed law. Yep. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act was designed to protect people from any kind of religious persecution. It wasn't designed to punish anybody.
So the soundbite you played of Hillary Clinton was very disingenuous, her response to it, because she said, she basically lumped all contraception together, and contraception is contra-conception, right? So Hobby Lobby, and this is really important, the 16 of the 20 forms of contraception they were providing. They disagreed with the 4 types that actually killed a fetus after conception. That was the issue there. So for Hillary Clinton to lump them all together, that's disingenuous. The bottom line is what the court did, what the Supreme Court did. It said we're applying the same standard to individuals. We're going to apply that to corporations. Tightly held small corporations with the religious beliefs have the same rights as the individual does. Now, the good news is, why is it only tightly held? Why is it only small corporations? You think about this. If you're out there and you're a lawyer and you're a bigger employer and you disagree with this on a religious basis, why not? Bigger corporations should get involved too. I think the Supreme Court has done a fantastic thing for people who are in favor of religious freedom in America more and more corporations should sign on to that with that precedent.
Greg, and how can they argue this anyway? I mean, the administration has given carve-outs for churches and religious organizations. They chose not to give a carve-out in this instance. And this wasn't part of Obamacare. This was HHS using an executive power overreach, according to Justice Kennedy, to subsidize, and they could subsidize these women's sex lives, the government, if they wanted to. There's 1,000 ways they could have done this. They chose not to, an unintended consequence of the Obamacare law. Why are they arguing against that? They wanted this bill.
I don't know, and I thought they wanted government out of these choices. You know, Fox News won't let me swear on the air. Is that denying my First Amendment rights? No, I can go outside and swear all I want. I can find another place to swear. Just so happens where I work, I can't use certain phrases that I love so much because I would lose my job. But that does not infringe on my rights. For feminist bloggers especially, this is their World Cup, but their World Cup is empty. You talk about overblown. They make Linda Blair from The Exorcist look like Audrey Hepburn. No grace involved in this, just shrieking. And it's because for a lot of these women who are activists, screaming is what they majored in. Campuses provide degrees in grievance. And there is no skill, there is no talent, just petulance. And it gets to a bigger point. You know, women have fought the stigma of fragile, emotional behavior for decades, for being accused of not being able to handle things. This hysteria by feminists has set back their cause by decades. I mean, they are truly resembling hysterics over a lot of this stuff, and they're being dishonest to other women. I don't believe they represent all women. They represent a small part of women who essentially do this for a living. This is what they do.
Mm-hmm. It's gone from, Bob, I am woman, hear me roar, to I am woman, hear me beg for Plan B. And doesn't it come down to just that conservative women or women who agree with this court decision are just stronger women than liberal women?
No.
I don't need a government or a boss or anyone or to pay for my birth control, but it seems like these radical feminists are far weaker than other women out there.
Well, you know, this is so funny Greg said that, because it's like the Plessy case. This is separate but equal. I can swear on the air, and I still have a job. So,
yeah, why is that, Bob?
Just like Plessy, it was, you know, separate but equal.
You have a carve-out.
I do. I have a carve-out. Let me tell you why you say shrieking about this and why I'm very disturbed about it. It's a slippery slope. It's like anything else. Yes, it was narrowly written. It was. But let's assume for a second that you, God forbid, go to what Eric said about big corporations being able to do this. But let's assume that these people were Christian Scientists. Now, Christian Scientists do not believe in having children taking blood out of them. Now, if you want to have religious decisions made by the head of corporations for 13,000 people that work for them, it is absolutely obscene.
All right.
I mean, I can't even believe.
Wait a minute.
I just want to say I can't believe the court would go this way.
Okay, so this is the inherent flaw in slippery slope arguments and why I banned that phrase. So the slippery slope is, if you don't pay for these pills, what else won't you pay for, i.e. vaccines or any other kind of life-saving thing? You could say the same thing if the ruling went the opposite way. If you forced us to pay for this, what would you force us to pay for now? It's a self-canceling argument. Just throw it away because it's pointless.
Well, answer my question about Christian Scientists then.
I just did.
You did?
You weren't listening.
I was listening to everything you said. But
the point is, because the argument can be used in both directions, it is inherently meaningless.
I don't know any religion that bans antibiotics.
But you used this analogy. You used it yesterday.
Yeah.
And you used analogy about Hasidic Jews. The Religious Freedom Restoration Act, signed into law by President Bill Clinton, a Democrat, was designed to protect Christian Scientists. This case, part of this case, Bob, was Amish, was Mennonites. Are you saying that a good political crouch is to kick down the door of Mennonites?
No, I think that law was meant to protect your rights to freedom of religion, correct?
If you didn't want to work on a Saturday, Bob, because of your religion, you didn't have to. That was the point of that law.
If you want to get contraception, you can't because of this, right?
You can always buy it yourself.
Well, what if
and there lies the problem, Bob. You say, what do you mean? Well, what if
you can't afford it?
This group didn't, believe in blood transfusions or whatnot? You can do that to your blue in the face. How about just eliminating the law completely? Because the only reason why we're even having this discussion is because President Obama insisted that the whole country have health care, and it be paid for by the employer.
Gee,
if that weren't the
that
requirement,
well,
this issue wouldn't have gone to the Supreme Court, and you wouldn't have to come up with all these fugazi little arguments. What if, 3 guys in the street are offended by
There's nothing gazy little argument about that. And by the way, what is wrong with all people getting health insurance?
Oh, please.
But Dana, actually, it wasn't even part of the law. Again, it was Kathleen Sebelius who designed this using executive power to implement these essential benefits.
Right, so that the Secretary of Health and Human Services was tasked with implementing the law and writing rules. And as the president admitted today, or a spokesperson did, nothing that the executive does without Congress will be as strong in the eyes of the court, which is why you go back to, I just think, on the bigger picture, it shows how wise our founding fathers were to set up the Supreme Court so that we can have how a bill becomes a law and then a check from the Supreme Court that is measured and narrowed and much more mature than any of the hysterical debate that resulted from it. That's
because you're assuming this is a mature Supreme Court.
Well,
you know what? This is the thing about the Supreme Court is that, Bob, if you like their ruling, you're all for them,
exactly.
and if you don't, you're not.
Actually, you love John Roberts.
The Supreme Court deserves to be. Okay, well, never mind.
No, go ahead. No.
I was just saying that the Supreme Court deserves and was set up to be respected and to be that last stop.
Can I make one very quick point? And Bob, you're right. You're right. You have to be careful. Why every single election counts in 2014. If you don't be careful, you could have more Supreme Court judges that are in favor. They're in the same camp. I mean, look. I
hope so.
Well, but if you don't believe in this, then you don't want more Supreme Court judges. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's old. She may step down. She's sick. She may say, I've had enough. If President Obama has the Senate, guess what? If President Obama doesn't have the Senate, that would be hard to get someone through.
Okay, they compared this to Jim Crow. They compared it to the apartheid. I don't know why they left out the Holocaust, but I think there should be a lot of people around that are pretty offended by these comparisons. The bigger point here is that this really isn't that big of a win for the right. They just slightly slowed down the coercive progression of government, but it reflects the intolerance of the other side, how they're reacting. These entitled bots are reacting as though the world is coming to an end. The final argument I will make on this is that people are upset that men made the decision. So what is the alternative? Should women judges only be allowed in matters that pertain to women, and anything that has to do with men, only men should judge on that? Is that the kind of world we want? Because that's what they're talking about.
Well, it also shows, I think, a strengthening of the First Amendment and how much the left hates it.
Yeah.
On all counts.
The connection between apartheid and Jim Crow is really very tenuous, to say the least.
I would agree with that. When we come back,